The film begins with a group of juveniles laboring under the hot sun while wearing prison clothes. It seems like they are excavating holes in the middle of nowhere, working in such hazardous circumstances. A little child called Barbag deliberately allows himself to get bitten by a snake to avoid hard work. The image then transitions to a young man named Stanley Yellentats going along the street. Suddenly, a pair of shoes fall on his head and knock him to the ground. He chooses to retain them. His insane family is now working on a solution for stinky shoes. On his way back home, however, he is detained by the police on suspicion of theft. Shoes, evidently, they belong to renowned basketball star Clyde Livingston, who gave the money to charity. The cops transport the youngster home and notify his family of their discovery. Incident. The Stanleys, however, are unsurprised and attribute the tragedy to a family curse. Stanley is then brought before the judge, who sentences him to 18 months in jail. At Camp Green Lake, a juvenile prison camp. There, he is presented to Mr. Sir, who is in charge. Mr. Sir is a very severe person, and he cautions Stanley that there is no use in attempting to escape, evacuating the camp since there is no water for miles. He also discusses that poisonous reptiles in the area have reportedly killed a large number of humans. Stanley is then handed his outfit and instructed to dig a 5 feet deep, 5 feet wide hole daily to develop character. While he is not required to search for anything in particular, he does. If he finds anything interesting, he may get a day off. Consisting of lads with the monikers X-Ray, Armpit, Squid, Zigzag, Magnet, and Zero. Zero is never. Since he is the youngest, he is quiet. Stanley replaces Barfback on the team after his dismissal, earlier taken to the hospital. At lunch, Stanley admits that he was falsely accused of a crime. Zero surprises everyone by breaking his silence for the first time since taking Livingston's footwear. Afterwards, a flashback shows that Stanley's great-grandfather Stanley I earned a fortune in the American West. One day, he is robbed by Kissing Kate Barlow, a lady whose nickname is Kissing. This propels him. In a period of months, he falls into a state of shock and becomes absolutely bankrupt. Without alternative, Stanley I begins working on a farm in Europe, where he falls in love with the daughter of his boss. He consults Madame Zeroni, a local clairvoyant, for advice on how to win the girl's heart. However, instead of marrying the girl, Zeroni advises him to go to the United States. Stanley I consider the advice, but in the end, he disregards it and goes to ask the proposal of marriage. Sadly, the girl's father requests that he send a large, plump pig as a gift, dowry, if he hopes to have a shot at marrying his daughter. Stanley I return to Zeroni. She gives him a piglet and instructs him to bring it up the mountain and feed it water from a stream, a naturally nourishing stream. Stanley accepts and promises to pay Zeroni a visit following his success. Moreover, he pledges to bring the elderly lady up the mountain so she may recover her vigor and youth. Finally, the pig gets larger and Stanley transports it to the father of the girl. As Zeroni predicted, the girl proves to be quite naive. She is no longer able to choose between Stanley and another gentleman of ordinary appearance. Disappointed, Stanley I follows Zeroni's initial recommendation and depart for America. Yet, in the process, he forgets entirely to fulfill his commitment to her. This frustrates she despises the fortune teller so much that she curses his whole male family for all time. Back in the present, Stanley gets used to camp life. One day, he realizes a student obtains a fossil and exhibits it to his counselor, Dr. Pendansky, in an attempt to get time off. However, the counselor informs him that the warden does not care about fossils. Furthermore, he says that this area formerly included a lake, and the property around it belonged to the warden's grandfather. The film then rushes back to a century ago, when the town was controlled by the warden's grandfather. Sam may be seen selling onions. He has a crush on Catherine, a local teacher, so he brings her a rose, a bag of onions for nothing. But she offers him a jar of peaches she gathered herself in recompense. Now, Stanley has convinced X-Ray and others to welcome him into their group. He was given the moniker Caveman. This is due to his skill in discovering fossils. One afternoon, he chuckles as he reads his mother's tales from a letter he gets. Zero will soon get there. He asks what he is laughing at and admits he cannot read. Then he demands that Stanley instruct. He attempts to teach him to read, but he resists, stating that he is fatigued after digging all day. One day, Stanley finds a shell casing-like item with the letters KB. Regrettably, X-Ray takes the day off and gives it to the counselor. The counselor subsequently reports the discovery to the camp warden, who is revealed to be a woman. Delighted with the item, she awards the X-Ray and instructs everyone to continue digging their trench. The film again leaps back 100 years into the past. Sam pays a visit to Mistress Catherine and offers to help, in return for 3 jars of her spiced peaches, mend her leaky roof. Catherine concurs, and over time, they get closer to each other. But other guys in the community begin to emerge interest in her. One night, a guy named C flirts with Catherine, but she ignores him completely. Sam completes her repair work after a few weeks, yet despite this, the two continue to hold hands. He eventually musters the courage to kiss her. Sadly, Trout Walker observes this and, in a frenzy of jealousy, he sets Catherine's school on fire. When the latter discovers this information, she seeks assistance from the local sheriff, but even he attempts to kiss her. Furthermore, he informs Catherine her black boyfriend would shortly be hanged for kissing a white lady. Terrified, Sam is shot in his own boat, despite her frantic efforts to alert him. This sends Catherine. She is in a state of shock and vows to revenge the murder of her beloved. Many days later, she murders the sheriff and gives him a kiss before fleeing. Catherine never looks back again, and her adventure as a fugitive starts. She proceeds to plunder. Before killing affluent businessmen and landowners, he signed their death warrants and bade them goodbye. Kiss. This has earned her the moniker Kissing Kate Barlow. In the meantime, following Sam's execution, as it never rains in the town and the lake finally dries up, Trout Walker's property becomes worthless. As Mr. Sir delivers the boys water one day in the present, Magnet snatches a bag. A purchased seed from him. Sadly, Mr. Sir sees the missing luggage and threatens to have it recovered. Everyone should be punished. Stanley volunteers to take the fall to rescue everyone else when no one else stands forward. Mr. Sir brings him to the warden in an attempt to get him punished for his crime. However, Mr. Sir gets reprimanded by the unpredictable warden for distracting the youngster from his digging. Zero digs a hole as Stanley comes to the field to congratulate him on rescuing everyone. Stanley, moved by the act, offers to teach him how to read and write. As they congregate, Stanley adds and subtracts and deduces that the shell casing he discovered earlier belonged to a machine gun. Really a lipstick tube. It belonged exclusively to Kate Barlow. In the meantime, Zero also reveals his true identity to be Hector Zeroni. It is evident that the youngster is linked to Madame Zeroni, who years before cursed the Stanley family. One day, the person in charge discovers that Stanley forced Zero to dig his grave. Holes. He criticizes both of them for being ineffective and for hearing this. Zero feels so angry that he strikes the guy with a shovel and flees the camp. The warden and other camp authorities discuss Zero's escape at a later time. Since Zero is an orphan, it is predicted that he will not live beyond a week. It is disclosed that his mother abandoned him in a park and never returned. Stanley overhears the exchange, which profoundly disturbs him. Later that evening, his great-grandfather, Stanley Yelnat, survived 16 days in the desert after becoming lost. His cart was stolen by Kate Barlow. Stanley, I lived thanks to a location known as God's Finger. No one knows the location since Stanley had gone insane by the time he was discovered, and no one knows where it is. The next day, Stanley resolves to flee in order to save his companion Zero. Having walked after spending hours in the desert, he discovers Zero asleep under an old abandoned boat. Later on, he says that he lived because of the peach jars he discovered in the cave. Clearly, the boat belonged to the deceased Sam. Next, the lads spot a mountain, a distant object that resembles a human thumb. As Stanley scrutinizes it intently, he realizes instantly that the mountain is God's finger. The guys begin their ascent of the mountain with the expectation of discovering anything. But around mid-height, they realize that they're not going to uncover anything. Zero becomes exhausted and unable to travel farther. Stanley refuses to abandon him and carries Zero on his back and ascends the mountain with him. Unknowingly, this fulfills his great-grandmother's wish. Grandfather's, Madame Zeroni's commitment to bear her great-grandson. When they reach the peak of mountain, they locate the stream. In addition, they find the onions that Sam cultivated near the stream. Meanwhile, Stanley's father discovers a treatment for stinky shoes, a solution of baking soda. The combination of peaches and onions. In addition, Stanley is found innocent, and the family's attorney arrives in camp to pick him up. Yet the warden conceals information about Stanley's escape. The next day, Zero recovers and admits that Stanley wound up in the camp due to his actions. It comes out that Zero took the shoes from the charity auction without his knowledge. As soon as he realized the police were searching for them, he panicked and hurled them down a bridge. Unfortunately for Stanley, the shoes landed on top of him. Hearing this, the second party he is surprised, yet he is not angry. Instead, he is thankful because he discovered God's thumb. The film flashes back to the past once again. Kate Barlow discovers Sam's boat in the dried-up lake, a lake that has now become a desert. When she sits alone, she recalls her deceased boyfriend. The arrival of Trout Walker and his wife to the scene, they inquire as to where Kate has hidden all of her stolen goods since they are destitute after losing their jobs. Everything is experiencing a drought. Kate refuses to aid them and instead does the unimaginable by allowing them to be killed. She was bitten by a lizard with yellow spots. Since then, the predecessors of Trout Walker have included. The present warden has been searching the dry lake bed for Kate's buried wealth. Stanley and Zero return to the area to search for the hidden treasure trove in the current day. First, he discovered Kate's lipstick tube. They eventually succeed, but not immediately. Mr. Sir and the warden come and attempt to grab the trunk. However, when they see that the yellow-spotted lizards have climbed atop the boys, they hastily retreat. The next morning, the warden is still awaiting the lizard's departure. She is able to take the chest. The boys are evidently still alive since the lizards dislike the onions they have been consuming. After some time, the attorney for Stanley also comes with the cops. The warden alleges that the boys stole her trunk. Zero instantly refutes her assertions when he discovers Stanley Yelnat scribbled on the trunk. Hence, Stanley is allowed to depart with the trunk while the warden and her accomplices are detained. Arrested. Also, it rained in the desert for the first time in a century. Later, the guys go to Stanley's residence, where they evenly divide the wealth. With his newly acquired cash, Zero employs a private investigator to locate his mother. It is revealed that she has been searching for him the whole time. The film concludes with the boys becoming neighbors and inviting all the freed camp children to visit.